Because of that mid-engine layout, it's just so eager to rotate. Ladies and gentlemen, 2016 Porsche Cayman Black Edition. This is a base level Porsche, but in the last model year of the 981 generation, they released the Black Edition, which came in any color you wanted as long as it was black. This is because as they were transitioning to the 718 generation, it helped to save costs, kind of limit the number of colors you could get, and the Black Edition did come with a few little perks. You have 20-inch wheels coming standard, not 18s. It says Black Edition right here. You get the embroidered crest, which the owner says he would have never paid for, but it came standard, although he did option the sport seats. And you also have a smaller diameter wheel for the Black Edition, and navigation came standard as well. Of course, the 981 versus 718, aka the 982, more similar than different. One thing you'll note from the exterior is that the rear lights here are a little bit larger on the 981. I definitely prefer the 718 on the rear end. But on the front end, I feel like the 981 has these more squared off headlights, and these just look far more aesthetic to me. So we're powered by a 2.7 liter flat six, pushing out around 275 horsepower. The thing is, it's really low on torque though. It's around 210-ish. There we go, she comes to life. Six-speed manual. We got no other options here other than the sport seats, so no extended leather package. We do have navigation, but there's no CarPlay in the 981. See a lot of these blank buttons. I'm going to turn traction control off, and we're going to put on sport mode. I'm going to adjust the throttle mapping. When I first got into the car, I was actually driving this on the highway here, and what really took me by surprise is how responsive the throttle is even when you're not in sport mode. And I kept over revving on the downshifts when I tried to rev match. It took me a few shifts to get used to it. But when you start pushing the car, and especially when you heel toe, it feels perfect. Driving around town, I felt like, hey, why is this throttle so sensitive? But as soon as you want to heel toe, just, beautiful. Absolutely perfect. Now keep in mind with the base Caymans, you do not get an LSD, which I think is very silly. And this is also lower on power and torque, so even if it did, I'm not sure how much rotation we would get on corner exit. The other thing that really surprised me when I first got into the car is how comfortable it is. Here's this dedicated sports car that's actually, the seats are great, the suspension is well tuned. Because of that mid-engine layout, it's just so eager to rotate and change direction with no fuss. If there is one critique I have on its driving behavior, is that it is a little bit sterile. You can't really kick the tail out, even on the higher trims that do have an LSD, that do have more power. It's the German way of saying, nope, we're not having fun, we are being precise. So balanced, so neutral. Now the owner bought this for around $65K new, and used these are going for around 40 because, again, the base gets no love. But if you're looking in the 40s, you are getting a lot of car for that money on the used market. Now even though this doesn't have all the bells and whistles that you have in a higher trim, it is still, the bones are so solid. And as a result, your seating position is excellent. The actual gear shift, not the best gear shift I've used by any means, but it's very easy to use. There's not going to be any misshifts. It has this nice mechanical notchy nature without being too difficult and too effortful as you enter each gate. It's really easy to use. The pedal box is dialed in perfectly. Clutch has excellent feel. Steering is actually a little bit numb, a little bit light, especially right around center. On the highway, I felt like it was unnecessarily light, where you just touch it ever so slightly in the car. It's not that the car has too fast of a ratio, it's that you don't get the resistance and the bite that you would expect when you are trying to change direction even slightly and trying to make these micro adjustments. Not completely devoid of feedback, but not as strong as the more recent EPS offerings. You gotta keep in mind, the 981 was the first time, the 987 was hydraulic, and the 981 was the first time the Cayman had an EPS, electric power steering. Long gearing here, not doing us any favors. This engine being lower on power too is not really meshing well with this longer gearing as we go uphill. But I do think many car enthusiasts overemphasize the importance of power and torque. And what I think is more important is the quality of the inputs and the balance of the vehicle. And that's why I loved even my 2013 Scion FRS, which I owned for 9 years. That had a lot less power than this. As we go downhill, I can say even the brakes, very natural. That's one of the things I love about Porsche most, is how natural and one-to-one all the inputs feel. There isn't much of a learning curve, you know, small things like the throttle response, but again, that actually is dialed in so well because when you do the heel toe, it meshes perfectly. But all the inputs, the car does what you expect. You don't have to really think about it. There isn't much of a learning curve. Owner has Michelin PS 4S rubber on here. We're just handling these twists and turns just fine. There we go, a little bit of understeer. Granted, I'm asking a lot from the front tires right now. So the Cayman, they have this huge range of Caymans, right? All the way up to the the GT4 RS, which was a completely different animal. Feels like a completely different vehicle. This car is great at 7, even 8 tenths. But as you push it, you start noticing things like the LSD, not putting the power down and not giving you any rotation as you get aggressive on throttle. You start noticing things like the McPherson strut front suspension not having enough camber and washing out a little bit easier than some other cars. Again, the bones here are really good, and the owner uses this as a, weekend joyride kind of vehicle, not a dedicated track car. And I think for those purposes, it's fantastic. You can enjoy this in comfort on the highway, on the twisties. It's responsive, it's fun. Again, a little bit too clinical, I would say, for me, for my taste. But that's really me just, nitpicking. And especially with the base Caymans dropping quite a bit in price, I think you get a lot of value. The 987 is of course a little bit more raw. You get the hydraulic steering, much better feedback. The interior that is quite a bit more dated. The exterior styling of the 987 is actually my least favorite part of it. But you really can't go wrong. There aren't that many near 3,000 pound cars with manual transmissions, naturally aspirated engines at this price point. And as car enthusiasts, I feel like a lot of car enthusiasts, we're very good at complaining and nitpicking all these little things we don't like. How dare they? They don't make cars like they used to. When in reality, we are very truly fortunate to have the optionality that we do. How fast cars are now, completely insane. And you see vehicles like the Cayman, which have evolved over 2 decades, getting more and more refined, more precise. I mean, you look at a 987, then you compare that to a modern GT4 RS, and you're like, holy crap, these are the same lineage? Cars have come so far, and I think we really need to practice some gratitude and appreciation, because I would argue we are still in a golden era of sports cars. Things keep evolving, things keep changing, but I'm definitely more of a glass half full kind of guy. Anyway, my friends, let me know what you think of the 2016 Porsche Cayman Black Edition with a comment down below. Subscribe if you haven't already. Big thanks to Barry for letting me review his cars. And if you want your car to be featured on this channel, visit us on jubbalandcars.com, fill out the form, and I'll see you all in the next one.